So today I'm going to talk about how you can be affected by your complacency either before you stop drinking or after you stop drinking. I'm Kevin O'Hara for alcoholmastery.com. Now, complacency is a danger to any alcohol user. It's dangerous to think that just because you feel no bad symptoms from your drinking now at the moment, that you're never going to feel any bad symptoms. It's dangerous to presume that just because the people who love you and are at this moment content to accept you to be yourself and to do what you're doing, and they're happy to stay with you, that they will always be there for you, that they will always put up with your drinking. It's dangerous to think that just because your drinking is having no consequences now, that there's never going to be any consequences. And it's complacent to think that just because you're handling your drink now, it doesn't mean to say that you're always going to be able to handle your drinking. Activist and humanitarian Benjamin Mays said, "The tragedy of life is often not in our failure, but rather in our complacency, not in our doing too much, but rather in our doing too little, not in our living above our ability, but rather in our living below our capacities." Now, I wanted to talk about complacency for those who are still drinking alcohol, or even for those who've quit, for those people who are, a month down the road, 2 months down the road, whatever. It's very, very easy for heavy alcohol users to become complacent for many of the same reasons that I've talked about in some of the previous videos about the benefits of quitting alcohol. There's only so many hours in the day, and you can't be in two places at once, right? You can't be doing two things at the same time. And while you're getting drunk, while you are drunk, or while your body is recovering from just the battering that this poison is doing to your body, you can't also be doing the important things that make your life worth living. Now, while you're getting lost in the perpetual drink, drunk, and recover cycle, what are you actually missing out on? What parts of your life are you missing out on? Now, I'm talking, from a lot of personal experience here. My drinking has certainly affected my life. It affected many of the most important choices that I made. It affected who I was, and most essentially who I was going to be. Now, with the average lifespan of about 27,000 days, the more days you spend locked into the drunken spiral, as Alan Carr called it, the more days you lose to the possibilities of participating in the things that create a life that's worth living for you. Now, drinking alcohol prevents us from achieving many of the things that we want to achieve in life. It prevents us from reaching our true potential. Now, of course, you can always say that you're getting to your potential, that that's where you're getting to anyway, despite your drinking. And you'd be right. I mean, your potential is what you're capable of achieving, right? And you're still capable of achieving a lot of things while you're a drinker. Alcohol is not that powerful. The body is much more powerful than that. Alcohol is more of an insidious destroyer, right? It takes a long time for the effects to become very apparent. Now, while we're drinking, we have no sense of this urgency. Everything can be left until tomorrow. However, the more that you drink, the longer that cyclical recovery takes, the more time and energy your body needs to overcome the consequences of your alcohol poisoning. So that thing that was initially left until tomorrow now needs to be left until the day after tomorrow, or the day after that. Maybe it just needs to be left altogether, full stop. It never gets done because the pile of things that you need to complete just keeps expanding. Now, there's an old saying that tells you that in order to get the best of your life, you should live every day as if it was your last. Now, what would you do if you knew that this was going to be your last day on earth? Would you really want to buy a case of beer or a case of wine and just get drunk? I know I wouldn't. Now, it's not just as individuals that we are complacent, right? The society that we live in is also complacent about alcohol. Now, one of the most reliable ways of reducing the harm of alcohol in any society is to bump up the prices, right? To put up the price. Charge more for the alcohol through taxation, and the levels of alcohol are going to inevitably fall. There's ample evidence that this strategy will work. It's worked in the smoking. For smokers, they've just, once they've increased the prices of cigarettes, there's far few smokers today because of that high taxation, because of the high prices for tobacco and cigarettes. Instead, the alcohol prices have virtually fallen. It's also easy to get onto our high horse about illegal drug users. Now, drugs like heroin are not used by the majority of people in our society, not by our politicians, the police, the doctors, the journalists, the teachers. These are all the people who set the rules, right? And it's easy to outlaw something that you don't use, but very difficult to call attention to a killer habit while you're playing a part in its proliferation. The majority of our society uses alcohol, right? The majority don't have a problem with using alcohol. They don't see it as a drug. They don't see it as harmful. They don't want to stop drinking, and that's it. That's democracy in action, however ludicrous that might be. And think about the amount of revenue that alcohol taxation brings into the government's coffers. No administration is going to abandon this amount of money very easily. Talk is cheap, and doing the right thing often exacts just a very high cost. Complacency is also a danger in alcohol moderation. How many people first try to control their drinking before deciding that they want to quit? I know I did. Over most of my adult life, right, I didn't see alcohol as being wrong. I really thought it was my attitude towards alcohol that was wrong. Now, for years, I had believed that I just didn't have that kind of self-control that it took to truly moderate. I'd gone through many attempts at quitting smoking, and I'd failed every time, so that really dented my confidence about my own abilities. I tried to moderate. I'd succeed for a couple of weeks with the drink, and eventually I'd fall back to my old drinking habits. Then I'd justify my failure by reworking my thinking to suit my drinking. I defend myself by telling myself that I deserved a few pints at the end of the week, that I deserved the couple of after work drinks. I needed to relax after all. I validated my high alcohol consumption while just conveniently ignoring all the signs that my body was telling me that I was doing myself a lot of harm. Now, at the end of the day, I never wanted to quit drinking at all because I didn't see this connection between the drug and the existence that living my life amounted to at that time. Just doing enough to get by, doing enough to continue with the habit. That's what I was doing. My self-image was of a proud working class man who enjoyed a few pints after putting in a hard shift at work. And that was my attitude all along. Now, finally, complacency is dangerous to the person who has had the sense and they've stopped drinking alcohol altogether. He pushes himself through the first weeks and months enjoying his newfound freedom. He feels great about his achievements and how far he's come. And then he gets to month 2 or month 3 or month 4, month 6, whatever, and he starts to congratulate himself, just how good he's been at controlling the urges. And so he should. But as he works these things through his mind, sometimes he can conveniently forget all the pain that the drinking caused, all the reasons why he stopped in the first place. And as he does that, as he pats himself on the back, he thinks about how easy it was for him not to drink. This is easy, he tells himself. And for the most part, he doesn't think about the alcohol at all now. Then he starts to ponder about the alcohol control. He feels strong. He feels in control. Could he actually control his urges? He thinks that he could. He contemplates what would happen if he just had just a one glass of champagne at that up-and-coming wedding. What would happen if he had just a glass of wine at Christmas dinner? What would happen if he just had a glass of beer when they won the match at the end of the week? Now, some people call this the alcohol voice. For me, it's called a pipe dream, and it's a problem that many people seem to have. So be careful that you remember the reasons why you are stopping drinking in the first place, and somehow keep those reasons, the reasons why you quit, up in the forefront of your mind. Habits are built over a very long time, right? Drinking habits are built over years. The alcohol propaganda has been built up in your mind from way before you ever started drinking. And it's going to continue to build up and to be around you way after you stop drinking. Now, this propaganda is very good at what it does, convincing Joe Public that there's nothing wrong with responsible drinking, convincing you that drinking alcohol is great. The alcohol using habit can only be broken down by replacing it with something else. You can't rip out that old habit and just have fresh air where that old habit used to be. So you've got to replace it with something else. Here, you have the ideal opportunity to replace your old drinking habit with something healthy, something that contributes to your life, and above all, something that you can sustain for the rest of your life, right? You need to have something in your life which is diametrically opposed to drinking alcohol, taking drugs, that kind of a lifestyle. Now, for me, it's looking after my body, right? I'm not doing a great job of it at the moment, but I'm getting there. I'm trying my best to educate myself about how my body works. I'm 50 this year, and I haven't felt this good about myself since I was in my 20s at least. I think about the food I'm eating and what it's doing to me. I think about the exercise that I'm taking, or the lack of it, and what that's doing to me. This makes it almost impossible for me to ever go back to drinking alcohol, because I know it's a poison. And if I'm consistently pursuing the goal of taking out all the shit from my diet, all the shit that I used to put into my body, and concentrating on making myself the best version of myself that I can be, how has alcohol got anything to do with that? It hasn't. It has no place in that lifestyle. And another element of that sort of life that I want to keep above, that stops me from drinking, is my son. So I don't want to encourage him to drink alcohol anymore. I've done that for way too long. Now, there's a book written by the late psychiatrist Viktor E. Frankl called Man's Search for Meaning. Now, this book was a memoir that describes life in the Nazi death camps and its lessons for spiritual survival. Now, between 1942 and 45, Frankl was in 4 different concentration camps, including Auschwitz. Both his parents, his brother, and his pregnant wife were killed. Now, based on these experiences and the experiences of some of the other people who shared his life at that time, Frankl says that we cannot avoid suffering, but we can choose how to cope with it, to find a meaning in that suffering, and to move forward in our lives with a renewed purpose. Now, his theory, known as logotherapy, says that our primary drive in life is not pleasure, but the discovery and pursuit of what we personally find meaningful. So here's a couple of quotes from the book. Everything can be taken from a man, but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, and to choose one's own way. Between stimulus and response, there is a space, and in that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. So between the urge to drink and you taking the action that you're about to take, either drinking or not drinking, there is that space where you get to choose your response. Do you choose to give in to the urge and to take a drink, or do you choose to stay on that better path that you're just laying out for yourself every day? It's all about your choice. And going back to what I was saying earlier about building a new and healthier and more life-sustaining habits, Frankl says that those who have a why to live can bear with almost any how. If you have your why, the reason why you're staying away from alcohol, your meaningful reasons to keep away from alcohol, then you're going to be able to deal with anything that's thrown at you, for now and for the rest of your life. You'll never drink again. Remember, just because alcohol is not causing you problems now, it doesn't mean that this is always going to be the case. So listen, thanks very much for listening to that video. It was a bit of a long rant. If you have any questions at all about this video or any of the other videos, then just leave a comment down below. If you have any questions that you want me to make into videos, or any suggestions for videos into the future, do the same thing, or leave me an email address. Leave me a message at my email address, I should say, kevin@alcoholmastery.com. So until next time, I hope you have a great week. I'm Kevin O'Hara for Alcohol Mastery. Onwards and upwards.